Hey everyone, we're gonna get underway. We're gonna record the session, so we'll make it available to this group, and we had some folks that couldn't make it. I just wanted to start up. I'm on camera now just because I wanted to say hi. A lot of you guys, a lot of you folks already know us. We've talked to you about active learning probably 2.5 years. So this time it's real. We're gonna make it happen, and I want to take where we're at with the process, how you guys can help, influence the design and the application, and what the schedule looks like for launch. So I'm gonna take you through that. We'll keep you on mute for a little bit of the time, but for sure I want this to be an open dialogue. So I'm going to keep it pretty informal. I'm going to take you through sort of the background of active perspective, and then I'm going to take you through the live design comps that we have for the application, which will launch quite soon. So let's get underway with that. Okay, so I promise I will not just PowerPoint the entire time, but I wanted to at least set the stage a little bit for who we are, who you guys are. I think it's a really, I have to say thanks a lot already for everything you guys have done in the past with us to help us understand the active learning space and some of the challenges that a pretty amazing group that we have, and we have more and more people dialing in right now. I think the fact that we have so many people on this webinar already shows us that we're building something that the world sort of has always needed. I have to say, I sort of almost personal mission to get this product built the right way, because it's so annoying to walk into an active learning space and know that it's a very valuable tool for education, know how expensive and hard it was for you guys to have built and then managed those spaces. So I want to solve that problem with your help. The team really is, it's quite lean and mean. It's me. You guys know me. I'm founder and CTO, Christopher James. I'm acting as product lead on this product. Allison, who's sitting off camera, she didn't want to be on camera this morning, I suppose. You'll meet her, I'm sure, at one of our events. She's helping me product manage and project manage the events, get us through the beta programs, get us on task. We've got a lead designer, a dedicated team of developers, and of course a QA and test team behind us. But you guys are the more interesting group, I think. We've got about 28 universities in beta. Maybe we'll add a few here and there. Those are really for top educational institutions in the world. So it's across 5 countries. It's a fantastic mix of central classroom managers, engineering departments, business schools, design-focused departments. It's a real interesting community, and I'll be aspirational and say at some point we should do we'll maybe tie it to another event like a InfoComm technology event, but we should get together as a team, because I think you guys would have a lot to say to each other. I know you all participate in things like the SCOMS events and things like that, but we should probably, once we get this product launched and we're getting into the deep details of our own roadmap, maybe we get together in person. We also have one company who represents a code academy. We've got one display company in the mix as well, who is very interested in what we're doing. And then, of course, I mentioned we're across 5 countries. So really, what's the goal of this? What are we trying to do? We're trying to make Solstice take another step forward to not just allow students to share content at a team table, to be engaged with one another, to compare their results across devices on a screen that they're working together on, allow us to have an intuitive sharing experience across those student teams in a multi-screen space. Okay, there are other goals behind that, of course, like increasing student, actually measure student engagement metrics over time to see if we can impact that in a positive way. We want to connect faculty and moderators with their students in new ways through technology enablement. And we want to, of course, leverage those multi-screen environments in better ways for teaching and learning goals. So those are pretty aspirational. I think they're going to involve us having deeper dialogues around pedagogy in the active learning space. Step 1, though, is, of course, hitting that first goal. How do we facilitate intuitive sharing between those teams? We want to get there very quickly. So one of the themes you will hear me talk about today is that we know that there are all kinds of amazing features we can add to this product going forward. I know some of you on this call, in fact, will already have those features in mind when we look at some of this to build. But things like table chat directly in product, like hey, we're next, get ready, or raise your hand from a student table. We definitely have heard that in some of the early rounds of discussion. Those will be in the roadmap. But my goal will be to build the minimum viable, valuable product so you guys can use it in situ, discuss those features with us, in a real visceral way because the product's being used in those spaces, and then we'll build the next step. This is not what we're going to build. I love this picture and hate it at the same time because that's a new, tech classroom. And if you guys, I think everyone on this call will know what's wrong with this picture. It's in a lot of expense, beautiful, modern, sexy furniture, and the old teaching model tied to it. So there's a ton of money that went into this space. I know who built this space. I won't name names here, but it was basically funded by a big tech company. And what you ended up with was, a hard to use whiteboard like system, a front of the room teaching experience, and students all staring at their own, expensive screens for no real reason because they're only 15 feet from that front display. I think this is almost the call to non-action. We do not want to build this space. We want to free you guys to design the spaces that the National Academy of Science has already declared are far more engaging, facilitate knowledge acquisition in better ways, and in fact, even have been shown to have student retention year over year increases, which, if your deans hear that, they will, they'll go, cool, how many of those can we build? Because that's really the retention model in education. So don't want to do that. Instead, we want to focus on the active learning model, the flipped learning spaces and things. So just a quick background. Many of you on the call will go, Chris, I've already heard that. You told me that you were going to build active learning in 2017. We actually have done a lot of deep research from 2016 to 2018. We had about 22 universities participating in roundtable sessions. I studied video of active learning live in environments. I've interviewed faculty. I myself used to be a faculty member at the University of Kentucky and taught in an active learning space. It was it's a fairly old one. Old school, wasn't even digital video switching, it was analog video switch, I think, that was in that space. And our original schedule was to launch in 2018. We had to pause for two reasons. We had the Gen 3 platform coming out, and I needed to get that done. And we found that we needed to go back to the drawing board on the pod-to-pod video encoder, and that's done now. So here's the good news. All the hard parts of the technology for this product have been built. The technology layer already exists. What doesn't exist is the final application that controls the technology, which I think might be a more nuanced, more difficult stage, but we will get there. And your role in this sort of dialogue is really twofold. You get to provide open feedback related to this initial app. Now, the course is partly left the stable, or whatever analogy you want there, but we will be able to get your feedback and probably flex the application in different ways prior to launch. That'll have to be a very rapid cycle, but we're in a rapid development cycle already. And the second thing will be allowed to help you to find the roadmap. And I want to make that point clear. It's not really, relaunch active learning in, March timeframe. So you'll have time to put it into real active learning spaces over the summer and launch in the fall. That's not the end of the story here at all. It will be very iterative. So once you're deployed, or once you say, hey, this part of the application is working well, or faculty are confused by this, of course we're going to have to change the product. That's called iterative design. But I think the best part of this will be, it'll be iterative design in real spaces with already real value hopefully provided to you. So I mentioned we did 2 years of studies here. I probably think everyone there will be 6 people on the call that recognize their spaces probably here. So these are the kind of spaces we studied, everything from Villanova, Rutgers, etc. I think I'm preaching to the choir here that you guys know these spaces can be quite unique in their layout and design. You know, everything from couches and screens with no tables to sort of rigid alignment of tables. It all depends on what the learning goal in the space is and how it's designed. Like the D image there has no front of room display. It's literally teams working together. The facilitator is going to sort of wander over, shoulder surf, say you're doing great, and then you know, want to compare results across tables. In E, what you have is literally, you know, giant screens per sort of loosely correlated with each table, and those teams all work together, and there is no front of room display. You know, and then if you look at the Rutgers one on C, there's a very large front of room display. So that active learning space I've actually watched, and you'll have a larger setup. The faculty member will say, you know, let's go through 15 minutes of review. Let's do 5 minutes of what this new challenge is going to be, and then kick it off to the team's screens and the team tables. And then that F one is a really interesting one. I don't know if Syracuse is dialed in today, but that's a chemistry lab at Syracuse University where they literally don't have an association between students and screens. They will loosely go over to a screen and start working together based on just grab some partners, all work together, and they move between spaces. So they're not even sitting down, they're standing with their tablets while they're working at those screens. So punchline is here, I think we've at least done our homework on the active learning challenge, the flexibility of those spaces, the variety of the layouts, the variety of the designs, and even the variety of the pedagogical models that appear in those spaces. So I think we really want to take it to the next level of discussion. Like, what does the application need to provide in these spaces? And when I say application, I mean this active learning application. So we've really learned sort of 4 themes here. And I think maybe none of these will be surprises to you. AL deployment, config, and administration is very problematic. And what I mean by that is if I were to, you know, go to Dartmouth, who's I think probably dialed in today, they have some very fantastic active learning spaces, but they're very, very expensive, which really puts the headwind on the ability to build the second or third or the fourth active learning space, because you have to have a fixed budget, which we'll talk about. Each space really means you got to go engage with, either you have custom developers that know how to talk to a Crestron panel and build a custom UI, or you now have kick off a huge project where you bring in a third party who's going to do your consulting and AV programming. What's terrible about that is you'll build a design that maybe works great for a particular space, but the very next room might not involve that same consultant and designer, and you have a completely new experience built on a different project. So you either have, you know, multi-million-dollar budget and you roll out 10 active learning spaces that will now be seamless and everyone can use them as they move between spaces, or you do them one at a time each year when you have budget, and you're going to end up with 10 very different UIs because you maybe had 10 different AV programmers custom building those interfaces. I don't personally think that's the right approach. I think if we can build the universal approach to how multi-screen environments should be controlled, then I think we're in a great place, because now faculty members could move between spaces without having to relearn a UI. Students could do the same. So that's problem 1 we want to really address. AL environments are also difficult to reconfigure. So even though, you know, you look around an active learning space and you see soft armchairs. I was at Warwick University in the UK, and they have these really beautifully furnished, beautiful spaces, great views out the windows, and they look very reconfigurable. Unfortunately, they're using hardwired video switching, so actually you can't really move the stuff, because if you do, you're moving the furniture away from a fixed screen that is hardwired into a switch that's already been custom programmed for the layout of that space. So you don't want to, you know, we want to also address that. I'll also point out, we won't talk about pricing on this call, but I do want to query the group about some models we're exploring. But I do want to say what the challenge here is. If I charge you, you know, a huge amount of money up front based on a fixed configuration and design, like, hey, we have 6 tables in this room, Then after the first semester, when you realize you really only need 5 teams in that space, then that's a problem, right? So I want to be very sensitive to flexible models, both from the design and UI side, but also the pricing model as well. Control of the AL space should include task-specific features. We definitely learned this. I think someone on the call, I can see that they're on the call, has actually pointed out some pretty cool things, like all eyes up front is a request that comes in often from faculty. And the challenge there is I want my teams to re-engage with me as a faculty member, because I realize that all 9 tables in this room are maybe confused about what the lesson challenge is. So I want to pause those tables and get them to look to the front. So those are things that we will be working on as part of this. And I'm gonna keep this chat window open because it's cool. And somebody just chatted in, number of seats in a space is always a challenge, especially, oh, awesome. That's an awesome point. It's not just tables and displays, it's the number of seats, because that should be flexible and variable based on how many people enrolled in the semester or what happens in this space. You'll see in the designs of the app, we actually took that into account. Simple shortcuts. Yeah, we also learned that faculty members might say, I want the junior tables to always be shown when I hit one button on the senior tables, because I've got 2 different cohorts in this business class. So we'll actually embrace that as well. And then the interface should be intuitive. That's obvious because I came out of academics, and I know you've got a massive variety of end users, like, you know, faculty members that I knew of that refused to even use a projector. They still had overhead transparencies and would literally write equations out in live, lesson. And they would demand that, people bring those things to the space to teach with. Those are those end of the spectrum versus, faculty members that just love to play with new tech, love to try out all the features and things in their classes. I think it has to be so intuitive that it really requires no training at all, which I think we can get to. It's just a challenge. We also, of course, need to limit functionality. So I had a great discussion with Dartmouth years ago where students would get confused between tables because you could do things that the technology would enable but weren't necessarily that useful. And they ended up getting in these confused points where one table would mirror to another, and then the third table would say, I want to see that table. And they think they're looking at table 2, but it's already been mirrored from table 1. So you have a daisy chain. That's what I call video looping. You can't do that. There's no real use case where that's valuable anyway. So we need to be careful to limit the technology in ways that make it more intuitive. Often technologists forget that, I think. It's like, well, it's technology, it's available, make it available to the end user. That's not necessarily what we want to do. And hidden transitions and things are always bad. So those are the things we learned. So the beta application itself, it's going to provide 2 major capabilities. It's going to be basically a designer tool that allows administrators, space creators to design through a drag and drop UI a new active learning room and basically hit save. I should have added one other role thing there. It allows that same designer to add users to that space. Okay, so you can say, here's the list of faculty that will be using this space. Runtime drag and drop control. So once the space has been created, you will then be able to drag and drop and video route it. So let's take a quick look at that. And again, if you guys have questions, either wave on video and go, I have a question, or put it in the chat window, because I'm happy to pause and discuss live. I'm gonna share the prototype. Now, just for context, we actually are beyond a prototype at this stage. We have a live application that's being built, but I want to take you through the prototypes because they're a little bit more comprehensive today. Literally, we're in a day-to-day. We challenged the team to take this prototype and build it in 3 weeks, and we're very close. So we'll be showing this application live at EDUCAUSE in Chicago in 2 weeks from now. All right, I'm taking you into the prototype. So this is the first screen that you will see. And this is really quite obvious what happens here. You will have already created an active learning space. I'm not going to show you how to do that. If you have pods in a room, you will have gone into your Kepler account, which will be a requirement to create an active learning space, and you will have denoted those pods as active learning enabled. So let's say I take 8 pods and say make these available, and then I create user-based roles just like you do in Kepler today, but there could be we're going to use the word space-time today. That's the name of this prototype app. You would create a space-time role called a space-time designer. That's an admin. And then there's also users. If I log in and I am as a admin, then I will be able to create rooms. Okay, so tap to create a space. And this is where you would name your room, of course. You would be able to select and delete rooms. I'm going to skip over that. And this is where you design. So let me take you through that a little bit. Again, when you look at this app, it's going to be as simple as absolutely possible to market. And what we found is there's 2 types of displays. There's primary and, of course, team table displays. And there's going to be a little walkthrough that shows you what that designer should do, like tap this to choose between projector or flat panel. And then you're going to literally drag these elements out into the space. Okay? And when you're doing that, you're going to be asked to outline the space as it looks physically, because the whole metaphor for this application is going to be when I'm looking at a tablet, I'm looking at the space itself. And if I'm a user, I'm going to be able to drag video around in that space to control it. Okay, that's the home run, because you could do that both by modifying a space that gets reconfigured, or you could do it when you create new spaces, and then faculty will only, their challenge is going to only be, can I align this application with the physical environment that I'm standing in? Because you'll watch faculty say things like, that's awesome, team in this corner. Let's put that over there because those guys are struggling. And they're going to have to look down at this app and do the same. Okay? So here's where you would create what we call a team block. When you drag a display out into the space, it will create a team block. Those team blocks are the interaction elements for your faculty or TAs to use to control the space. And you assign it a color and give the address, of course, because it needs to know where that pod lives. Okay, and then you drag them out. So these are ghost team blocks we're toying with the idea of hinting that there should be team blocks so that you know to drag them out into the space. And I picked a primary display. In this case, it's a flat panel, and it created the front of room display. So of course that's optional because some spaces do not even have front of room displays. Okay. So now I can, of course, move that anywhere I want in the space by editing it through touch interface. I can rotate it. So if it's, in a kitty corner, in this corner up in the top corner, I could put the primary display there and rotate it in space. And then I'm going to be able to tap display, choose between flat panels and projectors, and then create team blocks. So here I just created a team block where you would name it, team 6 or front left or team blue, however you want to denote what that team is. And then you can't see it here because I've got the keyboard comp up, but you would give that team a name, pick its color, and then you will actually, in this zoomed in view, is where you design the appearance of that team. And this is where you put chairs. This is where you put the table type. Is it rectangular or circular? And how many chairs typically sit at that? And hold on, I'm getting a question. I'm going to see what that is. Oh, okay. Yeah, can we disable the, that's a good one. Can you disable the join leave chime? Is there a way to do that?
I can retroactively.
Okay, we can't retroactively. Someone was asking if we could turn off the chime. That's an awesome question. I wish we could. It is distracting both for you guys and me. But so here's where you're gonna go. I have these, I have team. And it's 4 chairs. In my comps, I've only got the same repeated icons because we didn't need the designers to draw all the different options. But there'll be rectangular table, there will be oval table, and there will be circular table. Keep in mind, the goal here, again, is can a faculty member look down at the map that you've created and intuitively know when to route what to what, right? That's the goal. We'll find out if we've achieved that goal as part of this beta, I think, with your guys' help. and some of the questions I'll throw out there now that we know we need your help with are things like, do we need to put a, a door to show where the entrance to this space is? Do we need an icon that shows something like where, the shape of the walls? Hopefully not, because we don't want to obviously build AutoCAD inside of this app, because we'll end up in the deep end of the pool and you guys will have a hard time designing spaces again. But we think that there's some way to build just enough information into the map that would allow a faculty member to show there. Okay. So here's a space. Once you've designed a space, this is a sort of a rough comp of the space, and this is a very grid layout. I've got 8 tables here, and there's a reason for that. In beta, we will support up to 8 tables in the application. The technology can support 30 hertz, 8 tables, full stop between all those tables. We think we can get to 12 by GA, but we're not sure. Okay. And now I know a university on the call that's thinking, well, my space has way more than that. So we'll have to talk about how we get there. So you drag this in and you've got a front of the room and then you've got all your team tables. When I exit as a designer, I'm right away in the control view. So that designer now could then tap this and put video over here, literally by dragging it. So I will finger down, drag to this, and it will then show the video from there to there. Okay, so that's the whole app. And then I disconnect. Faculty members would see the login screen. When they log in, because they're an end user, they will then see this screen when they picked this room. So they'll have all the rooms they have access to, come in here, and they can now route video live. All right. Here is I'm going to skip to this. This is a comp that shows where we're headed with the shortcuts I mentioned, eyes up front. I don't have a comp for the display side effect that would happen there, but if a faculty member taps that, then all the screens in the physical space will dim and will show a font, big font that says, please look at front, please look at main display. We're still toying with the text there. And when you tap it, that toggles it back off. So that's pausing the team tables and allowing them to, re-engage with you. And this shows if I had tapped the primary to all. This is a wiring diagram, I'll call, that shows the front of the display is being broadcast to the team tables. When I route video from a table to table or a front of screen to there, the team's content fades, goes to what I'll call the background, and this content is now in front of it at full brightness. And we do that because we found that students don't want to be disrupted in a way where they get confused, right? If I had my own Word document here and the faculty member said, I'm going to show you guys what we need to go through on PowerPoint, and I tap primary to all, you can't have an instantaneous transition. That confuses the students. They're like, well, wait a minute, I was just looking at that. It has to fade and animate out of into the background. PowerPoint appears. And in fact, at the top of the screen, it will say, you're now viewing the front of the room display on all the team tables. So the cool thing about what we're doing outside of what an AV video router can do is I already have control over the appearance and the rendering, the visual effects on each team table. And that's a big part of this. I've got a couple questions. So beyond immersive boxes and displays, what, if any, additional video switching hardware are required for system design? Oh, that's an awesome question. I should have pointed that out up front. None. Because the goal here is we don't want you to have to do anything from an AV perspective to get underway. So you do have to have a gigabit switch, and the pods should be on the same subnet of that switch. So you can't take, the team table with the pod here and physically route it to a data center and back, because your performance just wouldn't be good. As long as they're all on the same subnet on the local area network, you're good to go. Obviously, you need to have an application running on a tablet as well. So you can either bolt that to the front of the room in your design, or you can have faculty members literally walk in with it under their arm and then log in and start controlling the space. We've got another one. How much load will this solution put on the network? Awesome question. Would traffic be local or going in and out of the university? Awesome questions. Okay, so Robin, the answer to that is, one, we're going to have for this group, we will publish a table that shows bandwidth consumption for various sets of scenarios. So like a 4K screen at the front of the room being shown on all 4K displays, for example. I think that'll be key because our compression ratios are about 500 to 1. Right now, things look very good as far as how much bandwidth you require. I don't think you're going to need to go get a 10 gigabit switch even and plug everything into it to make this work. We're seeing 30 hertz, 6 screens at 1080p, and I can't remember the bandwidth consumption, but it was very reasonable. Does the traffic go to the cloud? No. You log in and do account management and state management, like when you create the space and hit save, that goes to the cloud because we need other people to log in and get that state and be able to control it. But none of the video leaves the premises. And in fact, it's all TCP/IP, so it will stay on the local switch. It doesn't have to be on a tablet. We're actually someone's asking if it has to be on a tablet. No, it can be on a laptop if it needs to be. We're writing this in the Qt, and Qt is a cross-platform front end that can be deployed on OS X and Windows as well. That's definitely a dialogue we'll want to have in subsequent conversations with the beta group. I think right now we're designing very much focused on the touch UI interface. So for example, touch events from here to here are really key because I'm going to drag that video to that screen. But you could do that, for example, on a Surface tablet from Microsoft. Integrating with in-room sound systems. Not a lot of thought has gone into audio here, other than the fact that we know we have to think through what the room audio case looks like. My experience is there's sort of a one audio system rules all in an active learning space, and you don't want audio from this team table necessarily being shown on this team table because there might not be, you might get audio collisions in the space. I'll take a note though that should be a dialogue that we have with you guys as a group. How does that get handled? Should we, when you route video to the primary display, that's probably where room audio lives. Should we be routing audio at the same time? Things like that. That's a good question. So there's one use case in the comp. I'm going to go show you what happens when a display fails. Let's say someone unplugged that pod. There's a comp for that. Lots of failure states that we have to think through. Most of that will make it into beta, and we'll show you that soon. I'm going to skip now. This is stuff that's not as interesting. Here's a couple of things I want to talk about. And I'm pointing this out because I want your feedback on these things, and we'll talk about how you guys can provide feedback in a minute. But when I drag from here to here, and then here to here, and here to here, that means I want this table to be shown on these 3 tables, right? So this is a comp that shows, that denotes that's happening. And when I tap here, it would stop sending to this table, because that's what this little circle means. Stop going there. So that's why those circles appeared. And those blue lines are blue because blue is the table color for this. When this table is viewing that content, there will be a message at top of their screen that says, whatever the name of this table is, you're viewing that table, okay? So again, there'll be those transition effects that let those students know there's another table being shown to you right now that you don't have control over. And in fact, that message will be in the blue block so that, if I'm walking the space as the controller, I can see that everything's consistent. Team table will say, you're now being viewed on 3 tables, and these guys will have blue messages at the top of their screens. And if I tap that, I take him out of the send group. Of course, I have a shortcut, clear all my routes. And if I drag from here to here, that's an example of 1 to 1, and here's 1 to the front screen, and that to the front screen. You can only show multiple pieces of content to the front of the room display. Okay, this is one of those moments where we're going to restrict the technology to make the use cases simpler. So there is a use case for a faculty member saying to the teams, let's take a look at what team 3 and team 2 have done together on the screen, 2 posts on the screen. But there isn't a use case for a team of students to look at multiple tables at the same time, because that takes you into a very confusing area from the UX perspective. So we're going to limit that out of the gate, unless we start to hear very significant use cases that override that assumption. But in our early research with some of the folks on the call, we definitely learned that we should not let 4 tables be shown on one table, for example. It starts to get confusing. Does that make sense? So this is a special display. It's the only one that can be a sync, a viewer for multiple displays at once, because I might want to compare to the group. Okay, another thing I want to mention is we're toying with things like swiping across a wire, a send wire, to delete it. We're not sure, want feedback there. We'll give you guys a list of open questions that we know about, and of course you guys will generate a whole bunch of new questions that we haven't even thought of. These are still showing edit marks. Those would go away if I was a faculty member. So I knew this question was coming. Someone's asking about LDAP integration. Like, what access controls would be implemented to restrict access to various AL system roles? Right now, the intuition we have for launch is you will have designers, people that can edit, do layouts, modify rooms, and users. That's it. And a user can be credentialed through their email address and a password. Because we're going to use OAuth, that could be a front end, the same front end to integrate with your LDAP on-prem server or LDAP in the cloud. That's a bigger project. That's basically what we call our Kepler cloud integrating with LDAP. But OAuth does support that. So we're not paying ourselves into a corner. We would be able to, for example, read back LDAP groups if we need to over time. So that's not, I guess the short answer is not out of the gate, but we definitely have it on the radar. We didn't install lecture capture systems in our big active learning room. The thought process, I think, is that AL isn't really conducive to lecture capture. Interesting. Yeah. So someone's asking about recording and session capture. I think session capture is an interesting thing to explore. We're not going to do it as part of this project. We may be looking at it in our own roadmap for the team table to be able to capture basically snippets of video and PDF logbooks that then come out of a session for them. So they would be able to review what happened at their table in a session. Will Spacetime be compatible with my existing Solstice Gen 3 pods or require different immersive hardware? Yeah, let me reiterate that. Gen 3 boxes are all you need. It may even be that Gen 2i is going to be supported, but we will have a performance increase and have more table support with the Gen 3 platform. So all you need is that box, and you just need a software update when we launch it. So what we'll do is, as part of the beta group, you will get a download to your Gen 3 boxes, and you will get access to this application that drives those boxes. And then we'll ask you to deploy those. Cool. So that's a really high-level overview of the app itself. I am going to jump back to the slides so I don't forget the things I wanted to make sure I covered. It's like a ClickFest controlling both the video conferencing software and my desktop. So again, there's sort of 3 components. I don't know if you need to go to the details. There's the physical room itself that you guys design and deploy. There's the active routing API. This is when you hear me say active routing, I mean the underlying technology that allows a pod to encode its own state and send it as a video to another pod, and that destination pod to apply a visual effect and bring that video in and let that pod display it. That technology exists today. So the APIs are almost complete, and we will make them available to you guys if you say, you know what, I don't even want to use the app. I have a different use case here for mirroring pods to pods. So you could use our REST API to build your own space. The app designer and app control tools, of course, are what you just looked at. So here's the schedule. Beta program kickoff, that's today, this morning. We, on October 15th, we have a target to make the active routing APIs and the documentation available to the group. So if you guys wanted to toy with your pods by, writing a 3-line Python script that says, make that pod show over there and play with it, you could do that. On November 2nd, we will make the application available to you guys. So in the meantime, Allison will be working with you to collect email addresses for folks that will use the application, because you won't need to do any role-based management. We will do that through a thing called Test Flight on iOS, and we'll distribute the APK on Android tablets so that you could then pull our beta application through the Play stores or the Apple Store to get it to your tablets. And then you'll go to town using it on your spaces or build it in a lab. We will then send you a questionnaire. We'll do a follow-up roundtable call, and we will set up one-on-one discussions if need be. If people want to really deep dive and give us a lot of feedback, we'll reach out to do that as well. So there'll be kind of a bit of a scheduling overhead. Allison's going to help me with that. And then I'm toying with the idea of creating a public Slack channel for this group. So I'd be interested in hearing feedback on whether you guys think that's a good idea or not, but it allows us to do basically live discussions about what we're building together, hopefully as a group. And then we will launch with a target of March 1st. So we'll take your feedback. We will hopefully have time to iterate on the feedback, change design. We'll hopefully have learned some of the key questions. Like I mentioned, I hinted at, can a faculty member who's maybe wandering the space with a tablet and is oriented this way versus north versus south, can they quickly look at that UI and know where to put video where? And there are things we're missing, core capabilities that would keep us from being successful with you when we hand you the GA launch March 1. So there'll be an email that comes out after this where we will give you that schedule in more detail, like when will we reach out to you for email feedback, when would we have the Slack channel go live, etc. All right. So that's all I had today. I can't believe I did that in 45 minutes. It's pretty good. If you guys have questions, you can come off mute and ask them out loud. But I think we got, oh, hold on, someone's chatting one too as well. What will people see at EDUCAUSE? Ooh, good question. And that's coming from someone at Mercive, which is ironic. Well, the EDUCAUSE plan is we will have the application itself. I have a front of room display, and I think if I remember the booth layout, we have team tables, and we'll have people sitting at the team tables, and even the audience will be a team table, and we will ask folks to share to that team table, and we will be controlling it with the application live. So you can come see all this live at EDUCAUSE in 2 weeks if you happen to be there. Of course, if not, you're going to get the application shortly thereafter anyway, and you'll be able to use it yourself. Sound good? Again, I really want to thank everyone for the engagement. I think it's one of the best things about doing what we're doing here. You know, I came out of academics. I know that community well, and it's not a surprise to me that you guys are willing to give us input to sort of work as a team to bring this thing to market. I think the worst thing we could do is just speculate about what you want and build something and try to sell it. I don't think that's the model that Mercive has. I think if you worked with us in the past, you know that we really, really do view this as a partnership with you guys. I think it's going to be pretty exciting. So if you're at EDUCAUSE, make sure you swing by the booth and keep an eye out for the email that sort of lays out the program with your participation. Again, I want to make sure that we're not taking up too much of your time. I'm sensitive to that. You can participate at any level you want. You know, if you get an invite that says jump into the Slack channel and you see that it's busy and you want to ignore it, feel free to do that. That's okay. I'm really looking for a model that makes it easy for you to go, you know what, I just thought of something and I really wish Chris would do X in the app. And then you can fire off an email, or you can say, let's get on a call. I want to show you what I mean. We're going to be as flexible as we can. Please CC Allison on all emails to me when it comes to this topic. I travel so much and I'm so busy that I really get worried that I would drop the ball, to be honest. So please CC Allison. She'll keep me honest and keep the ball rolling on the program. Thanks again for everybody dialing in. It's going to be exciting, and we'll make a recording available of this shortly after. Someone's asking, can we send diagrams of the table set up to us? Yeah, for sure. As part of the beta group, I will send you those early comps and even these slides. So you'll get access to that as well. So I will, everybody saying thanks. Awesome. Again, thank you for your participation. We'll talk again soon.